So Simon, Simon Linke, who is presenting on, well, I'll let you do that.
Okay, thanks, Ian. So this is not my talk at all. It's actually Bernard Lehner ran this analysis. Mainly helped by ideas of Michelle Team and Robin Abel, and I really came in late in the piece, so really just big acknowledgements. But basically what I'm presenting is the first real global gap analysis for rivers, because no one up to now knows how much globally rivers are protected, especially adequately protected. The cool thing now, this is a quick ad slide for Bernard's major product. The reason why we can actually calculate that now is that we've got this product called hydroshades, which allows us to map the world's rivers and streams at a higher level of resolution, consistency, and accuracy than ever before. Anyway, so what's the problem? The traditional calculation of riverine protected areas worked like that, right? You have national parks area here, upstream, downstream, and you can basically just say if a river is represented with 20% in this protected area, then the river is happy. But obviously, the river isn't happy right here because it might not be protected and it might be in bad condition. So that's why we're not doing the usual bean counting of non-protected areas. People like me and Virgilio Hermoso, Ginelle, and all of our freshwater conservation planning group have often used a measure called upland protection. So basically, what that does, it says, if this thing here is fully protected, well, that's good. Here you calculate it's a bad condition here, and then once it enters the protected area, it kind of gets gradually better, which I suppose makes sense on first glance, but where it falls down is here. So here we've got a large protected area, and then what we calculate, and we say here, right here, at this point, it's got an awful lot of protected area, protected upstream, but we don't know what's going on locally. So there could be, it could look like this, and it could be locally completely destroyed, but yeah, we've got 90% upstream protected. So again, it's not the perfect solution to measuring riverine protection. So what Bernard, mainly Bernard, Robin, and Michelle came up is a three-tiered approach to define the protection status of a river. You obviously still need to look at local protection, so that's the traditional approach. Is it inside the protected area or not? You also have to think about how much the upstream watershed area is protected. But again, that doesn't consider whether the reach itself is protected, and I think it can fall down quite badly with that. So what we're proposing in this analysis is something that we call integrated protection, which is a combination of local and upland protection. So we propose, and I say this is really up for discussion, and I'd really like to hear feedback on it. We propose the following definition of a protection target for rivers with different watershed sizes. Small catchments should have the entire watershed, or 95% under protection, before we can call them in any way upland protected. Because if you've got a small headwater catchment and it's 50% destroyed, it's not good. Larger basins should be allowed to have an increasingly smaller ratio of upland protection. Otherwise, the Amazon, you would never call the Amazon adequately protected, right? So what we're saying now is that even the largest basin should have at least 17%, you might have heard the number 70% many times at this Congress so far, that's the AG target. But even the largest basins should have at least 17% of their upland area protected. So that's the target of the terrestrial. And then we can call a site that's locally protected and 70% of the upland protected as adequately protected. So that's what this looks like in mathematical or in a little diagram. So basically, if a headwater site is protected with 95% of the upstream area, we call it protected, then it's a decline of 20% per order of magnitude And down here, for the very large basins, we say, if they have 70% protected, then. And then we can evaluate. Here, for example, we can evaluate the protection of a river reach. We can say, this one here has 80% of the target upland protection. So it's not protected quite adequately, but it's almost there. This large one has a protection of 20%, but the target would be something like 40% here. So in that case, it has 50% of the target upland protection considering its size. This one here, that's actually, I think, an actual hot dot from the Amazon, is above the 100% of target upland protection. And one more theoretical slide, and then I'll show you some maps and real data. So as a definition, just to recap, the definition and calculation of the linear measure of integrated river protection, to be fully protected, 100% protected, a river reach needs to be A, inside a protected area, and match or exceed the target upland protection. If a reach is outside a protected area, it's considered unprotected, independent of how much of the upland is protected. And that's, again, something to discuss, right? And if a reach is inside of the protected area and achieves, say, 75% of the target upland protection, we count it as 75% protected. And in the end, you kind of get maps like that. Anyway, so protected area starts here, river recovers, but as long as it's not inside a protected area, we do not count it as protected. And then you can draw maps like this, like for example, for the Amazon, which is what we did. Anyway, results. Bernhard cranked the GIS and analyzed 6.3 million river reaches for the entire globe. Rivers distinguished by size into 6 logarithmic stream orders, so you will actually see those stream classes in my next results slides. And basically, yeah, it's a logarithmic split according to the long-term average discharge. And in the end, we get 2 tables. One comparing the local protection, so how much is protected really inside protected areas, and one is the integrated protection, how much is what we would say properly protected. Globally, and I'll say something about this in a second, but globally, basically, what you can see is the average local protection is 16%. When it comes to the integrated protection, which is local and upstream, it drops to about 13. However, that's a big however, the Amazon, which I'll present in a second, really pushes that up. Without the Amazon, we would actually get a local protection of only about 13% of average, and an integrated protection, so only, in terms of integrated protection, only 10% of the streams would be adequately protected, so that is low. As I said, the Amazon has a very, very high local protection and also reasonably high integrated protection, although larger rivers have larger segments in the main stem, the lowland have less of a protection ratio. The Mekong, interestingly, has a fair bit of local protection and integrated protection in the headwaters, and it drops quite steeply. But the one that I'd really like to show you is the Mississippi. And I think that really clarifies why this approach is quite valuable, because in the Mississippi, especially the larger river sizes, are actually protected on the surface quite well. So this is all the American national parks. The national park system that hasn't been properly designed for rivers. I mean, it's a great system, obviously. However, you hardly find any river segments that are adequately protected at the local scale. And I think this is kind of the single slide that I want you to walk away with from this. So, major findings. 67% of rivers have no protected areas in the upstream basin. 17% of the length of all rivers is in protected areas. The integrated protection is lower at 13.5%, but again, think about that these numbers are really highly skewed by the Amazon. So these numbers would be 30% and 10.5% respectively. And integrated protection varies quite substantially, so I'll just flick this back and forth a bit. This is local protection, and this is integrated adequate protection. So if you, for example, look at places like North America and Europe, you can actually see that there's a lot of areas, Australia for example, that are really badly protected under the integrated protection. And so what really stands out are places like the Amazon or Alaska. Anyway, so these results underscore, I'm not going to talk about this, ask me later about it, but they underscore several important points. First, it's possible to measure the extent of river coverage by protected areas globally, but measuring only the length of rivers in protected areas is definitely insufficient. There's more to this story. Second, substantial variations amongst geographies and river size classes suggest that protection is really uneven. Global targets, and that's also really interesting. Everyone always talks about the Aichi target and fixed targets and 17%, but these global targets, or targets that group all size classes together, I think are definitely insufficient of measuring and securing protection. Third, our results suggest that even if all existing protected areas are well managed to conserve rivering targets, many of the world's rivers remain poorly protected. And these gaps, and I think hardly anyone ever talks about it, these gaps are equally important to address as those in marine and terrestrial areas. So the gist is that protected areas cannot ensure the conservation of river systems by themselves, but if you design them well, and also spatially well, they can contribute significantly to river conservation if they're designed and managed effectively. Thanks.